Welcome to episode 6 of Cut to the Jase, of course, with NBL veteran, 15-year NBL vet, that is, 424 games in the league, and of course, a former boomer in Jase and Cadee. Jase, we've had everyone on the show. We've covered so many areas of basketball in the first 5 episodes, and now we're going into the NBA space. We've got GM of the Next Stars program and Liam Santamaria on, so another big episode ahead, mate.
No, it's awesome, and obviously NBL and WNBL this weekend, so it was a basketball bonanza. And like when we spoke about doing this, and me and you talked originally, like the idea was we wanted to talk to so many people involved in basketball that maybe everyone doesn't see the ins and outs of. And for me, having Lean on today, I think it's going to be a great insight into what that program does and how much it's achieving, because some of the guys that have come through this program, they've gone on to do great things, and we're now starting to see some of those ones who are the early guys sign some pretty massive deals, which I think is exciting stuff for the NBL and also the kids who have come through that pathway.
Absolutely. Talking about the Next Stars program, Jase, you could say it's step one towards the NBA for a lot of these prospects. Is that how we put it, mate?
That's how we put it. Obviously, part of our deal was with the Next Stars program, and a lot of that's what we want to start to speak to the juniors of this world and people coming through. And we believe that Next Stars program has shown it's step one to their NBA journey. But as we know now, yourself being so heavily involved in junior basketball, that step happens a long time before that. And so part of our sponsorship will with that program and with the NBL is we'll be looking to expand into the juniors and really start to push our reach, because we believe we're a great product for kids, and it's hopefully we can be part of their journey and especially providing elite comfort.
There you go, mate. Well played, well played. Before we get into the interview with Liam Santamaria, just some quick news points recently before we film this. Dyson Daniels follows on from Josh Giddey, signs a 4-year, $100 million USD extension with the Adelaide Hawks, with the Atlanta Hawks. A massive deal for him, coming off being a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year and winning Most Improved Player. And then the Brisbane Bullets replaced Javon Freeman Liberty. They signed Dakota Mathias, a 6'4" shooting guard from the US. Last played for the Fort Wayne Mad Ants in the G League, averaging almost 18 points a game and almost 40% from the three-point line, Jay. So some big news there, obviously, with Dyson Daniels and the Bullets getting some needed help for them going forward as well.
No, it's awesome. Obviously for Josh first and then Dyson, they're both from the same management group. Arguably, so maybe some people don't view it, but I do. Daniel Moldovan's the best Australian agent we have. He's been in the program and in that world for so long. And he's come through with a lot of these guys, and he's helped them on their journey with so much. And so one very happy agent, and I'd say a couple of happy families that like that money we're talking about, that's generational wealth right there. That changes lives for so many in their direct circle. And I just think it's great. It's well deserved. Dyson and Josh are both doing great things, and they're obviously going to carry a massive mantle for Australian basketball now. And then also on Brisbane, the Brisbane move, I didn't know it was going to come that quick. I don't know a lot about who they're bringing in. Seems like he's a bit of a shooter. Funnily enough, I felt like on the weekend they actually played some pretty good basketball. They go to Perth and win in Perth. Then they come home and they push United to basically a minute to go. I thought LP actually helped things tick over a little bit for them. And just play that middle piece between JA, who didn't shoot the ball on the Wednesday game, but he was involved and created a lot. And then on the Sunday game, he was incredible in how he played it and poured it on in the second half. So another addition. They've got to get used to that person. They've also got to find some wins. So let's see how that goes down.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for them is, first of all, welcome Jalen Adams to the NBL after, going missing for the start of the season. But I think the biggest thing for him, not only was he able to get going, but he showed some emotion when he found that patch in the fourth quarter. Had more than 20 points in that fourth quarter, by the way. Was sensational, but he showed some emotion like he cared. And I think that's the main thing for the Bullets going forward. Now, they did have a really good week, obviously winning in Perth, which we're going to talk about, and then almost beating Melbourne with a good comeback. But with how close this league is, Jase, as you know, those moral victories don't count for a win on the ladder. So regardless of their injury situation, they need to get some wins and get some wins quick. And hopefully the new import signing does that. But moving on to the NBA, of course, starting this week, we've got Josh Giddey and Lachlan Olbrich with the Chicago Bulls, Dyson, of course, with the Atlanta Hawks, Joe Ingles and Rocco Zakarsky with Minnesota. We've got Tyrese Proctor, who's been absolutely on fire during the preseason and summer league, along with Luke Travis in Cleveland. Dante Exum, he's with Dallas, currently injured. Jock Landale expected to have a massive year with Memphis and probably going to start early on for Memphis with Zach Edey being out with injury too. So a big year ahead for Jock Landale. Then Alex Tui at Golden State. So some key Australians involved in this NBA season, Jase.
No, it's really exciting, and I think the thing is like, I mean, look, I'm definitely getting older, but 15 years ago, that path it didn't look like that. So the NBA dream was, it was there, but it wasn't as, you couldn't see it. Now you can really see it. Like, people could have sat there last year and watched Alex Tui and a Rocco playing in Brisbane and Sydney, and now they're going and watching them with Ant Edwards and Minnesota, and they're watching them with Steph Curry. Like, that touch point is really there, and I just think for Australian basketball to have so many names in the system, it only helps. It only helps us, but I just think it also helps our juniors really see what is possible in this day and age. It takes a lot of work. Very few get to do it, but put yourself in the right position, work hard, trust the right people, and put the right people around you. Anything can happen.
And couldn't be a better segue into our special guest tonight, Liam Santamaria, GM of the Next Stars, which has obviously played a massive role in the amount of Australians progressing towards the NBA. We had a chat with him. We recorded it earlier. A really great chat and good to spend some time with him. But here's our chat with the GM of Next Stars in the NBL, Liam Santamaria. Yes, welcome back to Cut to the Jase with myself and Jason Cadee. And of course, very special guest tonight in the lead-up to the start of the NBA season. We've got the man behind the Next Stars program, the GM himself, Liam Santamaria. Liam, welcome to Cut to the Jase, mate.
Thanks, mate. Great to be on. Love the name, first and foremost. That was very clever stuff coming up with Cut to the Jase. And good to be on with you fellas.
I'd love to say I came up with that, but I'm not that brilliant.
So, and I think we came up with it about a day before episode 1. So, late edition, but we like it.
Was it AI? Was it Chat GPT sort of business?
No, definitely not.
I don't know who came up with it. It was just brought to me.
but Liam,
beautiful stuff.
What's your excitement like heading into the start of the NBA season? So many Australians in action, but in particular two sort of graduates, I guess you could say, of the Next Stars program in Rocco Zakarsky and Alex Tui. You must have a sense of excitement heading into this week.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny how it works out. You know, you've got the start of the NBL season, that has its own level of excitement. And certainly in the Next Stars space, you've got guys that are just about to get started or maybe starting their second year. And then a few weeks later or a month or so later, you have the start of the NBA season. And you're right, there's a lot of Aussies, there's a lot of former Next Stars in the NBA these days. And there's a bunch that are about to start their rookie campaign. And certainly those two in particular, Rocco and Alex, you know, I went on, you know, lengthy journeys through their pathway towards the NBA, and I'm so proud of both those guys. And you know, each of them is in their own unique situation now, and one in Golden State and one in Minnesota. And I'm just excited for them to take those first, you know, few steps. That soon they're going to become bona fide NBA players, and no one will ever be able to take that away from them. And the challenge ahead of them is to solidify themselves and, you know, keep themselves there and grow their careers.
Before we get into players, I've been around you a long time now, but not a lot of people probably would understand your role. We've all seen you in around the NBL, but your role with the Next Stars, can you walk me and everyone through how that came about and also what you actually do behind the scenes? Because I imagine, and I've seen, it's a lot.
It's a pretty involved role. It involves a few different, various skill sets, I suppose. How it came about, really, I've got so much to thank Jeremy Lowliger for. The former commissioner of the NBL. He did so much for the league over such a long period of time there, working hand in hand with Larry Kestelman in rebuilding the league. And for a long time there, he ran the Next Stars program. Obviously, the idea of the program stemmed from what Joey Wright and that group did with Terence Ferguson. Then, there was conversations involving Daniel Moldovan, from Lighthouse Sports about, hey, what could this look like in a bit more of a structured way? And then Larry and Jeremy grabbed that and ran with it and put all those things in place with the program. And then, of course, LaMelo Ball and Josh Giddey and, RJ Hampton was in the mix there in those first couple of years. And the program just exploded and put itself on the map. And then a couple of years later, I'm going to say around 2022, so maybe three and a half years ago now, Jeremy basically knocked on my door and said, hey, I could use a bit of help with the program. I'm the commissioner of the league. I'm running the whole league. And now the program, the league has really captured people's attention worldwide. There's a lot that's involved here. And, I could use your expertise and your relationships around the league. And now for a period of time there, I worked closely with him, learning the ropes and, learning so much from him as a mentor. And then, as he's moved on to other things, I've kind of taken on more of the reins. Vince Crivelli, Nicola are in at the NBL office, work closely with me, David Anderson as well. But, essentially with Jeremy no longer inside that NBL office on the day-to-day, I'm essentially working with those guys to run the program.
You mentioned it before. You kind of, especially with the Australian kids, and not to say that you don't do it with the overseas kids as well, but with the Australian kids, you really ride that journey with them. And the most recent ones with Rocco and Alex, like they were 2-year commitments. They weren't in and out. It was a full process. Identifying them is one thing, but then that next part of that journey, it's like just because you're a next star doesn't mean you're going to make it. But the other part is it's a real learning process, right? These are kids. What made you think that those two specifically could go on that journey where they've gone through their NBL pathways, different journeys for both of them in that NBL, but now they're going to take that next step to being long-term NBA players?
Yeah, well, they're both very unique personalities and athletes, of course, right? And they both have different skills and attributes. What they both have, though, is that Aussie grit. They're great teammates. They understand how important the locker room is. They're very coachable. They've got good work ethics. And, they're just the kind of guys that you want on your team. So that's a big tick. Rocco, of course, brings that just incredible size, right? That's the starting point, the height, the length. He is big. He plays big. He's got a big personality. And, that's the kind of thing that translates well to the NBA. One of the things in my space, I'm looking to bring guys into the NBL, but always with an NBA eye on them as a prospect. So for me, it's not can they play in the NBL, is can they become an NBA draft pick and play in the NBA? And on their journey there, could the NBL be a great fit for them to get them there? And one of the questions that's always on my mind in that space is positional size. That's so huge for as far as an NBA prospect is concerned. And you know this, Jase, because for years and years and years in the NBL, we've had guys that are incredible players and really should be NBA players, but they're just that little bit small for their position. Casper Ware and Jerome Randall and Bryce Cotton, like these guys should be NBA players, but positional size is such a big thing towards the NBA. Well, Rocco has that in a big way. He's got that genuine NBA positional size. So I think, that's the starting point with him. And with Alex, it's the IQ, it's the feel, it's the toughness. He has that versatility to play at the 3 and the 4, the defensive versatility. Of course, the key for him these last couple of years and moving forward is going to be how well does he knock it down? He's going to need to shoot the 3 ball at a high rate. But you combine all of that Then there's the families. Rocco coming from that athletic background, Alex coming from that more military background with his family, but at the same time, really a great support basis for both of those guys. So a lot goes into the process of assessing whether it could be successful for them. And, each of those guys has their own, unique attributes that come into play.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably wouldn't realize the intangibles that are needed, right? Like you can see on a surface level how good someone can be, but sometimes it just doesn't apply. And that can be multiple ways. It can be NBA to NBL, NBL to NBA, Europe, like it's all different scenarios and it's funny sometimes who fits in certain situations. Sometimes it's the guys you don't even expect. Do you, now that they're alumni, because technically that's what they are, do you still get feedback on these guys as they're in training camps and in pre-seasons, especially when it's so close to them being next stars?
No, not really from the NBA teams per se. They've flown the nest, so to speak. It's a process of staying in touch with those guys, of staying in touch with their agents in particular. I seek feedback from Matt Bolero on Rocco and how he's progressing, from Daniel Moldovan on Alex Tui, and really, I'm a cheerleader at this point. I'm not trying to kind of get in their head. They've got lots of voices and coaches and things like that, but just so proud of them, so thankful that they put their trust in me and the clubs that they worked with and the pathway, and now just really cheering them on, man, and enjoying watching them at that level and hoping for the best.
Let's touch on Rocco, because you said it before. We in Australian basketball probably haven't seen a Rocco. Maybe Bogues is the last example of true size and just moves well, good athleticism, good sense, and can just really finish. Now, if you dissect his NBL journey, it was a different one. We've had some that have excelled, and you've seen some have learning experiences, and he definitely learnt. But he's also young. People forget how young and new to basketball he is. How did you assess that as you look to push him towards the NBA? How do NBA teams assess it? And then how does he counter that? Because a lot of people probably wouldn't realize he actually went over to the US really early. He missed the Worlds. He went to the US. He worked on his body. And from what I heard, that kind of impact he made in his time going to the US early is probably what transitioned him into kind of hitting the ground running over there.
Yeah, well, it's one of the key advantages about our NBL season, if you're an NBA draft prospect, is the fact that we finish so early, right? If you don't make the playoffs by mid-February, you're done, and you can start that pre-draft process. So for some guys, that's, hey, let's take a minute or two. He spent a little bit of time, I think it was in Hawaii, on his way to the US just to de-escalate and catch his breath and get ready for the big journey that was up ahead. And then he made his way to Minnesota and he got stuck into that pre-draft work, got his body right, worked on his stroke because, he actually has the ability to shoot the ball. And we're going to see that more and more moving forward. So it's one of the things that we talk about. You can get a head start to your pre-draft process. He took advantage of that. I think the reality for Rocco at that level is that he's a rim protector and he's a vertical lob threat. There's a bunch of different things that he's going to bring to the table over the journey, but for right now, they're the key separators for him. And I actually think at the offensive end, he's going to find himself more comfortable at the NBA level than he was here in the NBL. And we hear that often, right? I mean, Luka Doncic talks about how much easier it is for him to score in the NBA than in the EuroLeague and the like. But what Rocco really needs is guard play that creates advantages, draws his defender, and can find him over the top. You think about what Josh Dent did for him at the Under-17 World Cup a few years ago, and he was never really able to find that in Brisbane. That partner, he had a hot little minute of it with Emmett Nah at points last season, but now you can see in the preseason he's playing with guys who know how to get that done, and he's there, he's ready, and he's ready to find it over the top.
It is an elite skill. People think just because you're tall, it's like, oh yeah, but it's actually a skill. Like having bigs who know how to play off guards, it can also help your, I guess, adjustment to that space. If you just know how to get people open, especially in that environment what a lot of people don't understand, it's not about how much you can do, it's about how much you can play off the good people. Can you play off the superstars? And that's probably Rocco's thing. And would you say Minnesota's probably the perfect landing spot for him, given they've got an Ant Edwards, they've got a Joe Ingles sitting there basically playing the uncle of the group, the second coach, filling pieces where he needs. Do you think that's the perfect spot for him right now?
I mean, I don't know whether it's the perfect spot, right? Like there's 30 different NBA teams. Maybe there's one or two. Once he landed there, we could see things about it that were great. But we can certainly see a bunch about this situation that was great. And it's interesting. His camp, his agent, the people involved with that group, his family, Rocco himself, were really determined to find a good situation more than a number in the draft. So, it's they were very much of the perspective, hey, it's better to go 45 to the right situation than 33 to the wrong one, for example. And what they liked at Minnesota was, hey, they've got Matt Bolero, his agent, has really good relationships with that organization. He's based in Minneapolis himself. You've got Rudy Gobert, as you say, to learn from. In the end, you've got Johan Berenger in there as another young, big, not too dissimilar to Rocco. So a little bit of pressure off Rock in that sense, where Berenger is the rookie that's expected to be more productive early on. And as you say, you got Joe right there, who went through that process with Dante when he first came into the league as a guy that can help mentor a young Aussie who's taken those first couple of steps. So yeah, it's a very good situation. And, I think we've seen him preseason. He's starting to look pretty comfortable pretty early.
And then the other guy, obviously, we're talking about earlier, Tui, lands at one of the more elite clubs you'll ever find, has Steph Curry on the court running around. Like, what he will learn from being in that environment is one thing, but how do you think, you've already mentioned what he needs to do and what he needs to improve. As a landing spot for him, it probably is a great system because they play guys that can play multiple positions and kind of fit in around Steph and co. Do you think that's a good landing spot for him, especially right now on his journey?
Yeah, really good. Of course, both these guys are on two-way contracts, right? So they're going to spend some of their time with that senior team and some of the time with their G League squad, but they're very much within that program. One of the cool things about this role is I've been able to see a little bit behind the scenes about these NBA teams and their processes. And the Warriors they value certain things in a way that perhaps some other teams don't. So they value some sort of intellectual measurements in that will tend towards being effective within their system. So it's not just, hey, come in the gym and get some shots up and we're going to have a look at you going one-on-one or playing 3-on-3. They do some testing to get a read on you as a person and your intellect, to say that the ball movement, the player movement, all the different things we do within this system that make us special and unique, will that player translate well to what we do? And they see that in Alex. Now, that doesn't surprise any of us because his feel and his IQ is one of his great assets that we got to know over a number of years. But it's cool that they've seen it in the pre-draft process as well. And as a result, they've wanted to bring him into their program.
Liam, I've got to ask, as part of the Next Stars program, any chance you get any singing lessons, considering the video we just saw of Alex Tui at the rookie day singing Wonderwall?
That was pretty funny. I did like the fact he just leant into it, right? Like, Jase, this. Like, you just got to go all in and then get it done and then move on.
You embrace it, you come out looking better for it.
Exactly.
I guess the next part to this is when you rewind and you talk about it. Now we're at this stage. How far the Next Stars program has come, but now we're looking at like LaMelo Ball's on massive money. Josh Giddey's just signed a $100 million deal. Like, from your point of view, how far has it come? And do you still look back and think how much of a role the Next Stars program did play in their journey?
You know what? Like, I'm really excited and proud, and I'm sure Jeremy is as well. And I know Vince feels this way, and Larry. I'm proud of the way in which the program and the league has supported those guys, in the launching of their careers, for sure. I'm also really proud about how it's helped the NBL, to be honest. I fell in love with the game, peering behind the blue curtain at Albert Park Court 1, watching the Melbourne Tigers play Leroy Loggins and whatever team was in town. I fell in love with the game, with the NBL. Was in the league for a hot, tiny little minute. I've been involved with the NBL for such a long time. And what's really cool traveling around the world and talking to people about global basketball, the Next Stars program has helped the NBL become globally relevant. One of people from all over the world, they know the NBL now and they think about it because NBA players come from there. It's a place that produces NBA draft picks. They know of the NBL because of LaMelo Ball, because of Josh Giddey, because of Alex Sarr, because of Ousmane Dieng, and right now Karim Lopez, Dash Daniels, these kind of guys. So I love that. It's opened, I think, a lot of doors. You think about, when Mike Wells came and first started coaching with the 36ers, one of the things he's talked to me about was like, hey, I wanted to come to the NBL because I know it's popping, and that's largely because of the Next Stars program. That's a guy that's like, hey, when there's a bona fide, real, genuine prospect in the mix, I want to know about it because we'd be in that mix. And so that's one of the things that makes me proud. You think of the NBA connection, the Euro League, these sorts of things that are happening with the league. A lot of that is because of the global relevance of the NBL, and a lot of that comes back to the program and the role that's played. So I'm proud of all of that, and I also feel the weight of responsibility to kind of keep that rolling, and sell that story and continue to bring high-level prospects into the league for us all to enjoy watching them and supporting them on their journeys.
So you've put me perfectly into this question, because while we're talking money and we're talking the journey, and part of what you're about to answer this is exactly what you said, but the NIL has changed the landscape of so many things for men and women. How do you now navigate that? Because that's going to play a big part in the Next Stars, and some of the money flying around is absolutely ridiculous for 18, 19-year-old kids. How do you navigate that with the Next Stars program?
Yeah, it's a good question. You talk about that money that's flying around. I think about a guy like you, Jase, who never went to college, came straight into the NBA. What would that look like now in 2025?
I would have earned a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a really interesting landscape, right? Obviously there's a lot of money for college athletes, and especially elite ones, particularly kind of older ones. And I'm fascinated to see what that looks like over the next little while. What does it look like when a guy who's been earning a 1.5 million USD and they don't become an NBA player? Now they come out into the pro world and they're on like what, maybe a fifth, like 5% of that, 10% of that in their first pro contract. That's going to be a fascinating thing that we're going to experience over these next couple of years. But specifically with regards to the recruitment of Next Stars, it's changed the conversation massively. When you think about when the program first came into existence, you couldn't make any money as a college athlete. That was a source of frustration for a lot of people, and this was the pro alternative, right? So you could make a little cash while going this way, and Ignite came in as a result. And now the conversation is very different. Now it's, listen, if you're looking for the most lucrative short-term option, it's not this. For the types of prospects that we're looking to support, we are not, the Next Stars pathway is not the most lucrative short-term option. But what it could be is the best basketball and long-term decision for you. And it's not going to be that case for everyone. As Jeremy would always say, we're never looking to force a square peg into a round hole with regards to this program. But for some guys, it's particularly, really elite prospects, we could be that best pathway. And you can see with Karim Lopez, like Karim's had millions and millions of dollars worth of college opportunities in front of him, but he really values the development that he's getting playing against grown men. He's really valuing how it's kind of setting him up for his NBA career. And you can see how it's working for a guy like Dash Daniels right now as well. Like, what an incredible start to his pro career he's had over the first month of this season. Melbourne United doing such a spectacular job of supporting and developing him and getting him ready. And I think that there is always going to be some guys who, for whatever reason, having watched it work for Lamella and Alex and Josh and Usman and now Karim and Dash and how it's helped, Alex and Rocco and others are going to say, hey, listen, like that's what I want to do. That's the right pathway for me. So they're the guys that we want to talk to, and I'm keen to talk to moving forward.
No, and I think that's the thing that it sound like a lot of money, but for some guys, Josh Giddey signing $100 million, the college offer would have seemed very small to what he just signed. And if he doesn't play as a next star, does he get lost in a college system where it doesn't work out as well? I think that's the part where the system in Australia and the basketball style we play, it's starting to show how much it translates. And so that's really where the difference is, right? And that's probably where you speak about the guys we have now in the league. We have Karim and Dash, both projected top 10. Malik and Noah also doing their thing. You just spoke about Dash. I think Dash has shown me that he actually plays better in men's basketball than he does in kids basketball. And which is hard to do. Like, it's a different step up. But I actually think, like, not that he wasn't great as a junior, but it's almost like his game translates to playing against men. How do they show signs at limited opportunities at times? Because that's what it is at times. Teams at the end of the day, like the thing with Next Stars, and I was a player, you want them to buy in because you're here to win games and feed families. It's not also about we want you to do well, but we also don't want you to play 30 minutes, we lose and you shoot all the shots. How do you help the kids find that balance in shining in a role, knowing that it's still doing its thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. Firstly, just on what you were talking, that's a really interesting point that you make about Dash. Because, we'd watched him, Braden, you were in the gym at the same time. We're up there in Brisbane. We're watching him at the Under-18 National Championships. Hey, we watched the Under-19 World Cup in Lausanne not that long ago. And I think part of the reason for that is he plays a very mature game. And, sometimes at the junior level, the spacing kind of gets not quite how it needs to be. Not everyone is as switched on defensively as he is. And now that he's playing at that pro level with more experienced guys, he's I'm sure it feels a little bit like he's amongst his basketball peers in many ways. Now, off the court, I'm sure he's into different things than they are, in this day and age. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting point that you make. And I think Karim's pretty similar, to be honest, in how mature his game and body is as well. But on the question of the fit and, how it all works together, it's such a unique program that it is like threading the eye of the needle in so many different ways. And everyone has a role to play, right? It ends up being a three-way partnership, any Next Stars engagement between the league, the player and his camp, and the team. And by the team, I mean the teammates, the owner, the GM, particularly the head coach and his coaching staff, the high performance staff, player development, all of that. It's all so important. To cut through all of that, there's a lot about, personality, understanding the situation you're in, not underestimating the quality of the league that you're about to play in. That's all really important. To get even simpler than that, Jase, one of the big things for me in this space, recruiting and evaluating players, in the NBL as a young guy and a next star, defense is your ticket to playing time. And so you see that with Dash. You see that with Malik Lewis right now as an older next star. He played a game high 31 minutes on the weekend in that win over Illawarra. He was an incredible plus 38 in that game. Why? Because he's a versatile defender that Josh King loves to be able to move around. Alex Starr was able to play a really consistent 18, 19 minutes a game because of the impact he could have defensively. So that's one of the things I talk about right from the very get-go with potential prospects is, hey, you need to come in and defend. because there's high-level offensive players on these teams. The coaches need to know you're not going to get blown by, you're not going to miss blockouts, all these things that are easy for young players to do. But at this level, you can't do that and stay on the floor. So there's a whole bunch of different elements. We're just touching the tip of the iceberg of the different things in play, but there's some of the things that I think are really important.
So off the back of that, can you give us any scoops on some potential prospects in line for next season? What do we got coming in?
Look, I mean, it's hard to get too specific, Jase. I think we all know that there is always elite young Australian talent coming through the system. One of the things when I first got involved that I was determined to do was to make sure that the pathway was a real, genuine, good option for those top young guys. Josh chose the program, but Dyson didn't. Tyrese didn't. I was saying, hey, let's make sure we're back in that game for those guys. So I was, really excited that Rocco and Alex came through the pathway. Obviously, I, really hoped it could be something great for Roman Cialepa, and I'm excited for what he's moving on to next. I'm excited that Dash chose the pathway for that same reason. I think I really want it to be a pathway that serves the future NBA players out of Australia. So, I know you had Lono on the podcast last week, like always keeping a very close eye on the guys coming through the system, and particularly there at the COE. There's lots of really good talent there right now. I mean, Dash is, the top, I think, 2007 guy in that space. But then you look into 2008, I think Jai Faale is an elite 2008 Aussie prospect. You go into 2009 and, you're starting to talk about guys like Luke Paul, who I think has a really big future. And I think the Next Stars pathway could be really great for him as well. So, internationally, of course, I was in Abu Dhabi recently where, the NBA Academy Showcase was on, and checking out the top guys from France and Africa and the like. But specifically, always keeping a close eye on the guys coming through here in Australia, because it may not be perfect for all of them, but I want to make sure it's a real genuine option for those top guys.
No, it makes sense. And there is a lot of talent coming through, that's for sure. Just a quick one on this, because now that the NBL and WNBL, it's not merged, but it's under the same umbrella now, and that's the first time in a long time it has been. Could you see a similar program coming to the women's?
I think it's a really good question and a really good conversation to have. We haven't, inside the office, dove into that yet. I think it makes sense to establish the foundations of this new era of the NBL under the same banner, and in many ways within that same umbrella first, and then look to potentially expand into these types of programs. Obviously, one of the elements about the Next Stars program is that it's so tightly associated with the NBA and the NBA draft. Of course, the NBA buyouts that exist in that space play a big role in the commercial realities of the program as well. So it would be a process of saying, all right, well, what does that look like within the WNBL and WNBA systems, and is there a way to make it work? But look, we've seen it be great for so many young players now in the NBL space. It only makes sense to really properly explore whether it could do the same for the women.
Last question from me. I've heard a rumor that the next Stars program has just welcomed an elite sponsorship in step one underwear. Can you talk to me about that deal, mate? It's incredible stuff going on.
Incredible stuff. Incredible. I'm surprised we didn't open the conversation with this type of business. No, I mean, Step One's doing so much great work in the space, and I'm told about how comfortable they are. I'm looking forward to getting into a pair at some stage for sure, Jase. But excited to have them on board, mate. And specifically with regards to the Next Stars, I know it's an NBL partnership, but there's a really big Next Stars component to it. I'm excited to explore what it's going to look like in that young next stars space. Really set it up with the partnership with Step One as an aspirational thing for young players coming through the system. You want to aspire to be cool enough to wear Step One, and you want to aspire to be good enough to become an NBL next star on the way to having an NBA career.
Well, fortunately for you, I'm calling you the president of the Next Stars. I can help you get some Step Ones, so I'll make that happen.
Good looking out.
Well, Liam, it was a pleasure to have you on, mate, to preview, the Next Stars featuring in this year's NBA and talk about their journey a little bit, and also what's happening with the program going forward. Doing excellent things in that space, mate. And like I said, it was a pleasure to have you on.
Cheers, fellas. Great to chat and keep up the great work.
Welcome back to Cut to the Jase. A great chat there with Liam Santamaria from the Next Stars program in the NBL, Jase. And some interesting points there, not only talking about the journey of some of these Next Stars and Karim Lopez and like Dash Daniels this year, but, we're touching points on, potential ones coming in the future, and also hopefully we get to see it in the WNBL in the future. So, the likes of Satya Fagan, who just committed to USC, might be able to stay and play in Australia and everything. But some really interesting points from Liam in that chat.
No, and he's obviously been around the game a long time, and he mentioned that his love for basketball, it runs deep, and he was part of that Melbourne Tigers, Albert Park, Lindsay, Andrew Gaze. He was around that crew, and I've known Liam a long time. I truly think he's one of the great people of basketball, and he's genuine in his love and care for people, and I couldn't think of a better person, honestly, to be in charge of that program just because of how he is. And no, it's very interesting. This next stage where they navigate this, it's going to be hard for the Next Stars, but his point is 100% correct. Everyone's path is different. And for some of these guys, missing out on 1 or 2 years of college money, it's small in the realms of their long-term potential gains, especially the ones who back themselves that they're going to be NBA players for 10, 15 years. And I think the NBL pathway is definitely one that makes more sense. I actually want to see something different with the women's one, though. I didn't bring it up with him, but I would like to see a current stars program, because the money in professional basketball and women's is growing, but it's not there yet. Some of these girls at college are making more than the WNBA players. So what about if we come up with this current stars program where we actually brought some of the elite talent of the WNBA and so on? Your Caitlin Clarks, how much? I said it last week. How much does it cost for her to come and play for? You're going to say Bendigo, but I'm going to say Sydney. I guarantee they sell it wherever they play. Whatever you pay for her, you'll make it back. I'm just throwing out different ideas. If Liam wants to take that, he's going to have to pay me for the rights. But I think it's an exciting time, and they can do some different things with it.
He's definitely not going to pay you for the name, because that name needs some work if that ever happens. So that's for sure. But a lot happening in the NBL. We've got to move on to our coverage of the NBL now. And Jase, who'd want to be an import in the NBL at the moment? They're dropping left, right, and centre. I'm just quietly hearing some things about some teams that are interested in Mason Jones, who was recently let go from the Perth Wildcats. And then I'm hearing some things with New Zealand as well. There could be change. Rob Baker not playing out. Isaiah Brockington hasn't had the season he's wanted to do, apart from that game against Tassie. So a lot of potential movement in the import space in the NBL so far.
No, it is. And I think it's just a sign of how competitive the league is. And I think a lot of people are expecting to maybe be better than what they are at this stage. The one thing I think you've got to remember is with change can come teething issues. And I think we're seeing that in some teams. And there's just no room for error. So we're seeing people make changes and people say, I can't wait 2 more weeks. I would rather make this move now and see what we can bring in that can help us immediately. And that's just the nature of the business. And unfortunately, for especially imports, a lot of it does weigh on their shoulders in terms of sometimes not numbers based, but it's how they play and what they can bring. And I thought he had a tough gig, right? He's coming into off the back of having Bryce Cotton in Perth. But ultimately, if you separate the fact Bryce left, he wasn't giving them what they needed currently, and they make the move. And New Zealand's an interesting one. I had heard that as well, and we have a big friend that will be on the show at some point. maybe that's a landing space for him. Who knows?
Ooh, there we go. There we go. We are going to have him on at some stage too, by the way. That is still happening. And the biggest thing I think that it's showing, Jase, is the amount of money every team in the league this year, not, the top 8 or whatever, every team is investing. They're not willing to just wait around for imports to find their feet. They need to see that money pay off straight away. But we're going to get into your JC 5 points from the NBL this past week. And this week, we're going to do a little bit differently because you and I tend to talk too much. We're going to put a 5-minute cap on it for 5 points. So we're going to start that. I'll hit the go right now. And your first point is heading to no regrets, Bryce Cotton.
Yeah, well, we can add the 3 to the 5 points because 53 points in a 40-minute game is ridiculous. The one thing for me is it's sometimes hard to change teams, and Bryce obviously is a quality player. But changing teams and environments can be a shift that sometimes can have its own teething issues. Once again, I'm saying that word a lot. But Bryce has stepped in. He's averaging 30 points a game or something. He had 39 in his first game. He goes up to Cairns, has 53. He's just, he is the best player in the comp. He will win his 6th MVP. And he is probably, if you want to put him up there with Jase, the best basketball player we've seen in the NBL.
And just quickly, the Wildcats line, no regrets. Do you think they have any regrets at the moment, considering Bryce touched on that in his Instagram?
I can appreciate their owner. He's done very well in business. A very smart man, I have no doubt. But you can't tell me you don't have any regrets. If you truly mean that, like, come on, mate. I even have regrets for you.
Have you seen Where the Millers?
Yes, no regrets.
Not one letter. Anyway, your second point, we're heading on to a guy who's been in the league for a long time, Chris Golding, continues to impress despite getting older.
Yeah, and it's like as he's got older, he cares less about what people think or he cares less about the shots he takes. He's probably averaged more shot attempts. He never did, but I think deep down, I know him pretty well. I started my journey with him. And I loved the time I got to be around him because he is a great person and comes with some arrogance at times for sure. But to come off an injury and come into that group and then the way he played on the weekend, mate, like he makes tough shots after tough shots. He's made, I think it was 100 threes, as in 100 games with a 3-pointer made, which is an NBL record. And if you think about the shooters we've had in the league, that's ridiculous. And then he moved into 3rd all time. I've been an NBL lover my whole life, and some of the names, he moves past John Riley, who was a Western Razorbacks. I was a kid when Dad was a CEO. So he puts himself up there with some of the elite names we've had, and I think that's just worth noting because it's also hard to come back. He's older, comes back off injuries. I've noticed he very rarely sprints now. He's a timed ink jogger and just picks his spots, and he's just a very smart basketball player, and he's using that to his advantage.
Third point, we kind of spoke about them earlier. The Perth Wildcats, mate, in a world of trouble at the moment.
Yeah, I still think there's a long time to go, but you can tell, for me, I'm just watching a group who doesn't really, they've had a man for however long. Bryce Cotton, I think it's 8 years, was the man, and it was built around that, and I'm watching what I feel is just a lot of people trying to do the right thing, but it's not coming across in the right way. JLA is sporadically getting touches. Doolittle does bits and pieces. Obviously, Windler got hurt on the Sunday game, which kills him. But even the young fella that starts for him, like he's coming in and he's shooting. When in my mind, I'm watching, saying, mate, just defend and create, get the ball to where it needs to, shoot what comes your way. But I sense they haven't found that. And knowing JR, he'd be trying to find that rhythm. For me, the Sunday game in Sydney, that loss, give or take, but the Wednesday loss at home to Brisbane, who had come off a 40-point loss to Wollongong, who hadn't won a game, Illawarra. I think that's a bad weekend for Perth, and they've got some things to figure out.
Yeah, bad loss in front of only 6,000 fans at RAC Arena too. So a little bit of trouble there in Wildcats land. Fourth point, you're going to go to an injured star and Jack McVeigh.
I just want to make a point of this because a lot of people don't realise what people go through. They see the weekends, right? And from all reports, Jack had a broken hand, broken wrist, something broken in his. And I watched him shoot free throws in that game. I thought something seems off there. And then obviously on Twitter, X, whatever everyone wants to call it, I'd seen some things saying what's going on with Jack. And so without knowing the full details, he's made the decision to go, I'm going to try and play to help my team. I'm getting paid a lot of money. I'm the main recruit. I need to be on the floor. And not a lot of people see what some guys go through to put themselves on the floor. And I just want to make note of, for him to put himself in that position, it's incredibly brave. And it's also for the fans to understand that not everyone runs out onto a floor fully healthy. Sometimes they're going through something. And for him with that kind of injury, that's hard to play through / almost not possible, which now he's had to have some time off. But I think it's a brave effort and worth noting that just so people can kind of see what kind of some people go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cairns did well in his absence to almost beat the Adelaide 36ers up there. And it was only Bryce Cotton's 53 that stopped him. But fifth and final point, you're onto a man who was on fire on the weekend in that win over Illawarra.
And I just think it's worth noting, Southeast need another scorer. They need someone besides Sobes. And Angus came in the first half. I think he was 7 of 8, 6 of 7 at halftime. So a lot of it was catch and shoot, but either way, you still got to shoot it at that clip. And I would have loved to have seen him go on for it, but it's hard after halftime sometimes. But I just thought he did a great job, and to come in and shoot at that clip, I think he was once a young athlete, and he's really developed that side of his game, and where now he's become a knockdown shooter, and he's kind of one of those guys, whenever he shoots it, you just feel like it's going in. So great week for him, and he can look to build on that now.
Yeah, just on that, Southeast Melbourne have been Jekyll and Hyde. They've had either sort of really bad performances or they've had some dominant wins. We've seen it against the Cairns Taipans earlier this season as well. So some patches there for Southeast Melbourne. If they can fix those and be more consistent, they could be a real force going forward. Now, we're going to move on to the tips, and you're still 10 points ahead of me. So you're on 25, I'm on 15. But I'd just like to note that I had a much improved weekend. I got 6 out of 9. You got 7 out of 9, which is a pretty good effort. So we're going to look to build on this. Hopefully we can find some momentum. But to be only 15 after that many rounds is pretty piss poor. But let's go to Wednesday, the Ignite game, the only Ignite game this week, Cairns versus Perth.
This one's got me nervous. I'm going to pick Cairns.
Okay, I'm going to go Perth. Thursday, we got New Zealand versus Brisbane in New Zealand.
This is another one that's got me nervous, but I actually think New Zealand have been playing the right way, and especially at home, they've found some energy at home, and I'm going to back them to right their wrongs from their first loss against Brisbane. So New Zealand.
I think they were good because Tassie were coming off a 48-hour turnaround and everything, and we're a bit lackluster to start that game. So I'm going to go the Brisbane Bullets. They've been a little bit more consistent than the Breakers for me. Southeast Melbourne hosting Sydney.
Geez, this doesn't get any easier, does it? Which Sydney's going to show up? I am going to go with Sydney to win in Southeast Melbourne.
Okay, I'm going to go Southeast Melbourne. And just on that, maybe we can, in future weeks, we can see a little bit more respect for someone like Brian Gorge, and I think we can hopefully aim for that as a league.
That was ridiculous. Like, what are we doing?
I don't think I can talk about it anymore, so I think you can speak about that, but it was pretty poor from my opinion.
I mean, part of me sometimes, like, Gorge would have been walking off thinking, I got ejected for that. At least let me deserve my ejection. Let me, like, actually let loose and get it. Let me kick a ball into the crowd or something. Like, I mean, coaches, yeah, you got to give them some leeway at times, and sometimes you got to stop them, but I wasn't there. I didn't hear all the words, but from what I watched, I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And the worst thing for me is sometimes the second tech off the back of the first one, especially if the first one was a bit of a maybe mistake, to double down on it, I don't agree with it. I think it was wrong. I'm hoping Gorge had an apology in his inbox, but it doesn't change the fact for me is, we spoke about this on the first or second episode, Gorge would have felt embarrassed by being ejected, especially in a situation where he wasn't trying to get ejected. Sometimes coaches do it on purpose. I'm trying to set a point, I'm out of here. I don't feel like Gorge was trying to do that.
Yeah, and interesting too, it was Billy Tomlinson that filled in for him initially, and then they came out of the three-quarter time break, and Bogues was in the main chair. So interesting there as far as that goes. But Friday we got Cairns hosting Melbourne United. I'm going United.
United in Cairns, yep.
Saturday, we got Brisbane hosting the Phoenix.
I'm going to go with the Phoenix.
I'm going to go with the Phoenix as well in that one. Perth hosting Illawarra.
Perth to win in Perth.
I'm going to go Illawarra in that one. Sunday, Melbourne versus Adelaide. I'm going Melbourne. Game of the week, by the way. Game of the
Massive game. Every part of me wants to tip Adelaide fresh going into Melbourne. It's a free hit at them, but I can't do it. I'm going to go Melbourne.
It's going to be a massive game. Really interested to see how they guard Bryce Cotton, considering the tear he's on at the moment. And then to finish the round, we got Sydney hosting Tasmania, looking for a bit of revenge after that poor performance in the Unite Cup game last week.
I'm going to go Tasmania to get a win on the road.
I'm going to go Sydney in that one. And that wraps up the show. A massive edition, of course, with Liam Santamaria on. Plenty of action going forward in the NBA. Plenty of Aussies in action. And we've got it all covered for you on basketball.com.au. We've got features on all the Aussies going forward this season. And just for the cut to the Jase as well, we've got Montrezl Harrell coming up when we get that finalised. We've got Sandy Brondello and we've got Casey Prather from the Brisbane Bullets. So some star-studded guest lineup in the next few weeks, and really looking forward to talking to those guests. But another massive edition, and we look forward to another massive week in Australian basketball, and we'll see everyone next week on Cut to the Jase.